Hello, everyone, and welcome to the TagoIO Immersive Training for Software Developers 2025. This is the morning session. We'll have 3 sessions. We'll have this session. There'll be an afternoon session today, and then a session tomorrow. So I'm glad everybody could make it. These are extremely popular, and this one is no different. So this is I think we've done this for the last, I think this is our 2nd year doing these. And as I said, they're very popular. I get a lot of great feedback as the customer success manager here at TagoIO. A couple things. You'll see a link in the chat, a sticky link that has our LinkedIn page. I would follow us on LinkedIn so you get information on events like this, webinars, and some other cool thing when we do, new device releases and things like that. So a lot of cool stuff there. Also, tomorrow, you will receive an email from me, and there will be a link for a survey in there. One of the questions, if you could please take the survey tomorrow, whether this is the only session you join or you join all 3, please take that survey. But there is a question in there. And one of the question is, if you would like to receive a $100 promotion code to take our Learning Center developer certificate. I'll show the Learning Center at the end of today's session, so you guys know where that's at on our website. But you guys we'll waive that $100 fee. So I see we got a lot of people from Canada joining, Brazil, Argentina. Awesome. Good morning, everybody. Fort Worth. Very cool. Ecuador. People from all around the world. Very nice. All right. So as I said, there's a link up top. Follow us on LinkedIn. Also, during the training, please ask questions. That's what this is for. It's interactive, and we're not going to go through a bunch of slides and things like that. There are a few slides, but the purpose of this training is to show you in real time, right? Hello, Roger from Peru, Clive from Kenya. Welcome, everybody. So let's get started here a little bit. So I am David Hall, the Customer Success Manager here at TagoIO. The presenters today will be Victor Lima. He's a lead software engineer. And we also have Freddie, which is a community manager, but also a developer. Freddie will be presenting, and then Victor will present later in the day. I'm going to go through all the agendas because maybe you didn't sign up for the 2nd session or the afternoon session or the session for tomorrow. So I'm going to go over what we're going to be talking about this morning and in those other sessions. I'll put the link for the afternoon session to register some point during this webinar in the chat. So if you haven't registered, you can just have a link, real easy access, and sign up for the afternoon session. They're all very different from the fact as far as the topics, but of course, the main topic of these trainings is really to give you some in-depth information on how to do things on the platform. Because again, I like to tell customers that when you think of Tago, think of customization. That's what Tago is all about. It's all about customizing, and you can do it yourself and never have to come to me for professional services or your CSM that's in your region, right? Your customer success manager. So that's the name of the game with Tago, customizable. So with that, we've already done the team introductions. We'll be talking about connectors and downlinks. A new release we have is for the entity. We'll go into some detail there. I get lots of questions on that. Managing user registration automatically with Tago Run and scripts. Again, lots of questions I get on that as I've worked here for many years. People are always very interested in that. KickStarter, which is a great foundation. Victor will go into that in a little more detail, but basically it's a foundation where you can manage customers if that's how you want. There's many different ways to use it. And then also we'll talk about RTLS modifications. That's more real-time location sensing is what that stands for asset tracking, supply chain. But I have customers that use it for many different things. It's not just in those verticals. Access management. And then we'll wrap up the morning session and give a quick recap at the end. In the afternoon, this will start at 1:30 p.m. as it says here, Eastern time. We'll talk about data management, chunks, import, export, and stream. This is a very critical part of the platform for a couple different reasons. We'll get into those reasons, but part of this is really, if you manage your data correctly and things like that, you're going to benefit, obviously, in the end, right? What is rate limits and control tower? And what can you do with control tower, and how are they tied together? Also, something that's very new and I'm very excited about is TagoDeploy. What TagoDeploy is, just to give you a little tease, is so right now everybody on most customers, I would say 99% of them, are on the multi-tenant TagoIO platform. What TagoDeploy is, it's a single tenant instance where you can manage it. I'm not going to spoil it, but that's at a high level. KickStarter, and then we will wrap up. And then for day 2, we'll talk about how to visualize your data. This will be done by Claus, one of our lead developers. He's very good, as all of our developers are really thinking about the end user experience, right? And the things that you can do on Tago, so you just don't have kind of a boring dashboard. That's kind of his theme that he's going to be going through tomorrow. Custom widgets. There's some really cool stuff around custom widgets. If we don't have a widget, basically you can build a custom widget, right? Using formulas, conditions, dictionary, and widgets. I don't think enough people take advantage of dictionary. It's what I hear from customers: either they don't know that it exists, or they don't quite understand how to use it. It usually falls in one of those categories. But dictionary is very powerful as well. Data analytics. I like to say data doesn't lie, right? So data analytics can tell you a lot, as I'm sure we can all agree on this call. Different ways to use metadata. I also think this is a very important topic. Basically, with using metadata, you can really keep your costs down if you use it correctly. There's other things you can do with it, but that, as a customer success manager, I'm always looking out for the customer. How can you optimize your platform to get the best use for the lowest price, right? That's a huge part of my job. Metadata is just one of those ways, right? And then we'll do a recap of day 2, and then we'll wrap up. As I said, if anybody joined a little late, there will be a survey that goes out tomorrow to everybody, regardless of which session that you've joined. And in that survey, there is a specific question that's going to ask you if you want the $100 promotion for our Learning Center certificate. The Learning Center is free, by the way, and the certificate, that has a value of $100, and it'll tell you how to ask for that. Then with that, I'm going to pass it over to Freddie. He's going to talk about connectors and downlinks, and we will take it from there. The floor is yours, Freddie.
Thank you, David. So let me just start off with an introduction to devices and parsers. So within TagoIO, devices, which are what you can store data inside of, can be either mutable or immutable. Mutable devices will allow you to edit device data, but it does have less storage. So in this case, 50,000 data registers, which would be 50,000 variables. And also, mutable devices do not have a native data retention feature like in the immutable devices. By data retention feature, I mean a way to automatically delete older data. Otherwise, in the immutable device, it is not editable. You can store a lot of data for as long as 9 years. And you do have a native data retention feature, which you can pick when the device data is deleted. And also with devices, you need to be able to parse the data that goes to the device. So payload parsers will normalize data. It will send data to your device's buckets. And at TagoIO, we have 3 types of payload parsers: the network payload parser, the connector payload parser, and the device payload parser, which I'll go more in detail in the next slide. And also within the payload parsers, you can read configuration parameters. You cannot write them, but you can read them. And also down here, we have an example of the data structure of a variable that's stored within a device. In this case, the variable here is temperature. You can add its unit or not, which is optional, and the value of the temperature, which is 55. And there's also lots of other keys here, like metadata, where you can store a lot of data without increasing your data input costs. So it's always very recommended to use metadata when possible. But it does have its drawbacks. When you use metadata, you can't query directly into the API to get a specific key within the metadata. You would need to do a query for the value of the variable only. So keep that in mind. That's important. Okay, so here we have the network parser and the connector parser. So the network parser is the first parser that the device data goes to, and then it goes to the connector payload parser, and then it goes to the device payload parser. So the network payload parser is more important for when you're using a LNS, for example, where sometimes they have specific variables that all your devices that are using that LNS will produce, like gateway names and RSSIs, or any very specific data for that specific LNS. So that's what the network payload parser does. We have a bunch of them already existing inside of TagoIO, like off the top of my head, like TTN, the Things Network, Senet, Curlink, I think, is one of them. So those are the network parsers. And their job is to produce this variable here, like the gateway 0 RSSI, which is expected for that network, and also more specifically the payload variable, which is then used in the connector parser. So all of the connector parsers at TagoIO expect to receive the payload variable sometimes along with the port F variable, which states the port. So those two variables are used then in the connector payload parser, which then parses the data of the device itself. So that's where the temperature, the humidity, the location variables come into play. Sometimes LNSs can send location variables too. So just to keep that in mind. And also connector parsers can be public or private. By that, I mean, you can go into your profile, your TagoIO profile, and create a connector just for you. And then you can share that to another profile if necessary. But then no other user within TagoIO will have access to that connector. So that's useful for when you have like a device and you already have its decoder and you want to tweak it a little bit for some reason. So then you would make it private. And then we also, let me share my screen here. 1 second. One second here, GitHub. So we also have this repository, which is where we store all of our public decoders. So here you can actually create a PR, which will allow you to add connectors to TagoIO where any user can use it. For example, I'm going into the files of the repository here, and here in the connector folder, we have all of the folders of the manufacturers. And then if you select one, like Digital Matter, for example, you can then see the sensors within that manufacturer. So here we have the Matter Falcon, the Oyster Sigfox for the specific LNS, or the regular Oyster. So if I go inside of here, we then have more information like the image of the device, which is here, and also specifically the decoder here. So you can create a PR and actually send a decoder to TagoIO, and then we will review it, see if it hits all the marks necessary, like having a unit test, creating the data specifically in the TagoIO format, which I specified a while ago. And then it will be public for all users to use. So just to let you guys know. And also here would be all the keys of that format that I was mentioning. So here we have the variable, unit, value, time, group, location, and metadata, and if they're required or not. Okay, so now let's head over to the bulk import of devices item. So here I'm inside of my admin dashboard. I have a dashboard called bulk device upload. And here I'm able to create multiple devices using a single CSV file. So here, the way it works is when I send the data, I'll pick a file here, and then it will run this analysis here using this input form widget. So you create a field, another field just for validation. So you can show the user what you're doing, and then you will create the analysis, the bulk upload analysis. It will start the analysis. So let me just copy that here and open it. Okay. So here we have the analysis, getting the file. And then within the file, going down here, we call the method resources.devices.create. And we're doing this for every device object. So let me show you the file here. So this would be the CSV file. As you can see, there's the name, the type, the chunk period, and the chunk retention. So each one of these will turn into an object, which then will go inside of this loop here and create the devices. So if I now utilize the input form here, and submit. Let me clear this so that we can see this together. And submit. So now it sent the file, and it started the analysis. And here it's sending out the device ID and the token of each device. Never show your token here. This is sensitive information, but I'll be deleting this device afterwards. But do not ever show your tokens. So here we have a device list, which is showing the devices that I've just created. So if we go back here to the analysis, we can see here that I created the devices with some tags already. So for example, it's using this connector and this network. The way to know what connector this is would be to, I think only TagoIO can do that actually. The way you can get TagoIO employees, the way you can get the ID from here would be to, for example, click the device, select the network. This would be the connector ID, and this would be the network ID. So in this case, we have the Actility network, which is here, and the Abiway Smart Badge connector, which is here. So the network payload parser and the connector payload parser. So let's go back here. So here I've created the tags from bulk, specifically this one. And then these two just to be able to show them inside of the device list widget that we have here. So this here is a device list widget, as you can see here. And we have some variables, some pieces of data which are already from the device. So we can use device information and we don't need to add it to the device itself. And then we have the tag key retention period, which I've added to be able to show it here. Also retention interval, connector and network, which are already in the device information, and the device ID, which is already here as well. But the from bulk tag, which is the value yes, is used in order to select which devices we're going to show here specifically. So if I click here on device list filter, we have the from bulk tag, and if its value is yes. If the device has this tag and this tag value, it will appear here, which is how it's being shown here. Also, we have a example. It's step-by-step instructions to create your own bulk upload setup here as well. So you would have the templates for everything here, like the analysis here. You can click this and get the analysis already on your device, on your profile, and also the dashboard here as well, and an example CSV file. So, and also something important here. Right here. So it's also important to set up your access policies for the analysis. Otherwise, it won't. Otherwise, the analysis won't have permissions to use the methods within the analysis, within the resources. So that is important. Okay. So now going to my next topic, which is using configuration parameters within the payload parser.
Real quick, Freddie. For the audience, I see there's two people that are asking to speak. We don't have that enabled right now. So everybody that has questions, feel free to use the chat, and we'll get to those questions as soon as we can. So apologize for that. I can't actually enable for you to speak on this, but just go ahead and post your questions. Okay, Freddie, sorry for the interruption. Go ahead.
No problem. Okay, so now talking about creating, using configuration parameters in the payload parser. So I have an example here. So here I have a device list, which is showing devices with this specific tag here from like before, device type CFG example. And here we're showing its name and its firmware version. So I've configured this device to modify the way the payload parser works depending on this configuration parameter. And I can edit the configuration parameter from here using this column here. So let me go back here. Here, if I want, I can change it from firmware version 1 or firmware version 2. And then that affects what comes out in the lumen variable. So let me show you how you do that here in this case. So to do this, I've created a connector, of course, which is CFG decoder example. And it uses the HTTPS network. Any connector needs to have a network payload parser to go through, right? So if you come here to the device parameters, I've added the field called firmware version, and then I've picked what are the options when you create the device. Here being version 1 or version 2, and then that will be translated to value 1 or value 2, right? And then here. And this is where it will be shown. So now let me show you that. So here in the devices page, when I create a device and select CFG decoder example, which is the connector I created, I can then select the network. And then here is where this was, you were deciding where to show the selector, right? So here we have firmware version 1 and 2. Also, if you're creating a device via an analysis, you can just simply add the configuration parameter, firmware version, and then the value. So if you were to, you could, for example, create an input form within a dashboard, and then that input form will call an analysis, and that analysis will then create the device with the firmware version. And you can, for example, add a field inside of the input form, and then get that variable, which is going to be used in the value of the firmware version. So just to keep that in mind. So that's how you set up the parameters that are going to be used within the payload parser. This is only necessary if you're going to be creating the device via the devices module. Otherwise, you can just simply go to the connector payload parser and look for the parameter like this here. So you'd use device.params.find and then the key version and get its value. So here we have the 1 or the 2. And then according to that, we will either create a payload called variable. We'll either create a variable lumens with the value times 2 and the unit lumen, or we will create on firmware version 1, we would create a variable called lumens with the value times 1, and the unit would be changed to flux instead. And in this case, this payload parser will look for the payload variable, like most connectors do, and it will then create these variables. So let me come here to a device, turn on the inspector so that we can see the data coming in, and send a payload example here. So in this case, so we're about to send data to the device. Its firmware version is 1, so the payload here will be 50, and it will be lumens. It will be flux actually. So if I send that, and then check the inspector, we can see the raw payload that arrived, which is what I've just sent in the emulator, which is the variable payload with the value of 50. Then we can see what happens inside of the connector. The network is not showing here because there's nothing inside of that payload parser, so it's just being ignored inside of the network payload parser. Then here it created the lumens with 50 and the unit as flux as expected. And then here, it just repeated what it had before. Right, yes, because we have this enabled. And then it added it to the device itself, which is then here a few seconds ago. Now, if I change it via the dashboard, I can do it here as well, but it'd be more interesting to use a dashboard because that's the normal use case. So then you would come here, save. So now it should be 2. If you come here and refresh, the firmware version is now 2. So that will change the way that the payload parser works. So this will now be 100 and it will be in lumens. So now if we come here and check the raw payload, 50 as expected, then it changed to lumens, to the unit changed to lumen, and the value was multiplied by 2. And then it's saved here as well a few seconds ago. And also here as well, lumen. So that's how you would use payload parsers, configuration parameters within payload parsers. So this is not just for firmwares. This is very useful for if you want to somehow compare the device data without needing to use analysis, so that you don't keep using analysis runtime every time you send the data to the device. So you would run the analysis one time just to send the data, send the parameter to the device itself to configure it. And then every time the device data comes in, it will verify if the data is correct depending on the configuration parameter. So going to my next topic here, which is downlinks for LoRaWAN. So let me just close this out. Okay. So here I have 2 examples of sending downlinks via LoRaWAN. So let's go first with the easier one, which is by using the SDK. So here I have an input form which has the payload and the port, and then a send button. So as you've expected, probably, you know that this will start an analysis called LoRaWAN downlink example. So if I take that name here and copy it here, we can find the example here, the analysis. So this analysis in this case uses the SDK to send the downlink to the network that you're using. The network being either one of these here. Mostly the LoRaWANs, which we already expect that we're going to be sending downlinks to them. So also, in order to send downlinks to an LNS, it's important that you've followed the step regarding setting up your authorization. Otherwise, when we send the downlink, we won't have a way to, we won't have credentials to show the LNS that it's the actual user using the, sending the HTTPS request. Okay, so basically you just use the uchos.send downlink method and then send the data itself. So since your device is already using the connector for a specific LoRaWAN, like here, Actility, it will automatically create the API request and send that data to the LNS. But in the case of there's also the option to manually send data to the LNS, which would be the manual way. So this way, you'll also have the same data, basically, payload and port, and you'll be using a different analysis in this case.
Hey, Freddie, we have a quick question. Do you want to take it now, or would you rather wait?
No, yeah, we can take it now.
So are these analyses published? I believe they're not published, but I do believe we have examples and tutorials on analysis. Is that correct, Freddie?
Yeah, these are not published. I can create a link to share them after I finish talking, and then I can send it in the chat if that would be okay.
Sure. Yep. There you go, Gino. Freddie will take care of that and send you a link sometime during this this session. Thank you, Freddie.
Mm-hmm. So I'll create a link for all of the analysis I've used here then. So, which is done like this, I believe. You come here, then distribute, you create the template, and then you copy this link and send it out. So I'll be doing that. Okay, so back to the manual LoRaWAN downlinks. So here in the SDK version, you'll just use the utils.send downlink method, which is inside of our SDK, which you can also read more here inside of this website. So all of our methods are here. I believe most of them, including the send downlink here, which then explains it more. And you can also look here as well. Okay, and then here we have the manual version, which is basically a little bit harder because it's not already done for you. But this is important for you to know so that you're not, what's the word? Forced to wait for TagoIO to create the integration for you. So you could simply look at their documentation and then send a Axios. You can use Axios to send a post request to them, which I've done here, for example. So basically what I did was I went to TTN's documentation here. I followed this documentation. They try to make it as simple as possible as well. So giving us ways to just copy it over. And then I've added it here using the Axios method. So I use their URL, the method which is to post it, the way to authorize the data, and then the data itself in their format, their specific format that you'll see here, as well as well, I've already mentioned that, right? So this would be how you could do it manually. So you can send a request to anywhere you want. Also, something important and interesting is in the bulk device upload here, in that analysis, you could, for example, create devices. You can add an API request in that analysis to already create device in your LNS as well. So that would speed up the process that I've seen in some clients doing that. So that's interesting. You can do basically anything inside of analysis, right? So, okay. And also, how to use the MQTT relay is another item. So let me show that here. So here we have the GitHub repository, but let me. Right. So here we have the community post. No, actually, our knowledge base post showing how you can use the MQTT relay to send data to your devices at TagoIO via MQTT from any broker. So here we have a nice image explaining how it works. So your device would connect to your external MQTT broker, and then that broker will send data, send data to the relay, which is subscribed to the MQTT broker, and then that relay will forward data to TagoIO. So, and here we also have a video explaining this step by step, and the repository itself, which is here. So you download this repository, then you'd run the TagoIO relay init, which will then open up, it will create a file, and then you'll open it up like here. So then here, actually, let me explain. Okay, so this is a file that you'll need to add data to in order for the relay to work correctly. So it's asking for your network token, authorization token, the Tago URL, which won't change, downlink port, which won't change, client ID, you can change if necessary, TLS, you can change if necessary as well, the address of the MQTT broker, the external broker, which is very important, as well as the topic that the relay will be subscribing to. So the relay will check if any device data is being sent in this topic specifically. and the relay will use the following username and password to connect to the broker and subscribe to the data, right? So that's the data that you'll need to add to the file that runs the relay. Now, in order to get that data, you'd open your console, of course, and then we'd start off with, go to my other, I have a profile just for this. Okay. So you'd create a connector and a network. First you'll create a network and then a connector using that network as done here. And then here on the connector side, you won't need to do anything since it's all, unless it's in your specific use case, maybe, right? And then here we have the relay network. So you'll enable the serial number, since we'll be using that in order to get the data and then relay it to a specific device, right? So here we create the relay, the network token. So this is where you create it. You copy this and you add it here to the file. And here we have the payload parser, which is used to get the serial of the device. So in this case, we're getting the serial, the topic within the metadata of the variable, that's the payload variable, and we're getting the last part of the topic right after the last dash here. So it would be like this, for example. So this is the topic, and then here would be the serial number. Okay, and then also you need to get the authorization token, which will be created here. You'll go to devices, click on authorization, you'll generate a token, and then you'll copy it here. You won't need to add any parameter within the authorization token itself. Then having done that, you would then create a device, right? So I've created a device here using the MQTT relay connector and the MQTT relay network. So you just come here and go to my connectors and select the one that you've created here. And I have one which with this serial here, which is what we need in order to send the data to TagoIO. So I'll be using EMQX here as an example for my external MQTT broker. So here I already have a free broker running, which I believe you pay as you use it. So, and here I have the address. So you can then copy this and add it here to the address. Having done that, you then need to create the access control here. So you come here to authentication. You'd create your username and password, which is what I've already added here, TagoIO relay as the example. And that is everything you'd need to send data to TagoIO. So now there's a cool option, a cool feature here, which is to test the connection. So here I'm inside their testing tool. So I can come here and write TagoIO as my username and the password as relay and connect. Okay, so now I'm connected. So let me turn on the relay here. 1 second. So here I have I'm going to start the relay with having set up this. So now the relay is running and it successfully connected to the broker. Connection to the MQTT broker was successful. So now all that's left to do is to test it out. So you have to remember that we're specifically looking for the following topic, dash device dash, and then the serial. So then we can come here and copy this and add here. And I'll keep this here, the data here. So if I publish this and check the relay, it states that it received the data on the topic device and the serial, on the device topic and the serial here. And it parsed it because it didn't give us any error. If there were an error here in the second. Let me open integrations. Actually, duplicate. If I come here to integrations, relay, and click on the payload parser, this successfully got the serial, and so it should also be here, the data that we've just sent. So yes, a few seconds ago, so it just arrived. So if you have a more specific way that the serial is operated, you just change this payload parser code here in this case. And those are all of my items. So in this case, we
have a few more questions here. Let me go here. 1 second, guys. I'll start the presentation, Freddie, for the next part of it. Mm-hmm. Next, we'll be talking about entity. That'll be Victor. Victor could come on in a minute, but we have a couple questions here. If we don't get to your questions, by the way, we do have a community and obviously our support team. But one of the questions, this is from Luis, I'm using MQTT Relay and have noticed that the live inspector does not show the variable being set. Could it be an error in my setup? I would assume it would be an error. I mean, Freddie, you can speak to that if it doesn't take too long, or they can just post the question in the community, but I'd assume it's something in the setup.
Right. The MQTT Relay, it does not add data to the live inspector. So that's expected in this case.
Got it. Thank you. And then when to use MQTT Relay instead of TagoIO MQTT? From Adrian. I'm not sure I quite understand.
In this case,
I can join here to help.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Victor, that's Victor, everybody. Welcome, Victor.
Hey. So the relay is on that use cases where you need to use an external broker from somewhere else, right? So, for example, you need a broker in Europe, which is something that we don't have currently. We plan to have, but not yet. You would be limited to use another broker server from a different service. So the relay allows you to connect to any broker from any service you want to use.
Got it. And then, Victor, there's one more question. Does TagoIO host MQTT broker for paying clients?
Sorry, can you repeat?
Does TagoIO host the MQTT broker for paying clients?
Not yet. We have the Tago deploy, which I'm going to talk in the afternoon. And through the Tago deploy, you will be able to have your broker hosted by us. You can even have the relay or a ship stack embedded network service. But I'll let you to explain all this in the afternoon.
Got it. Okay, thank you. That's all for the questions. Victor now is going to go through some very important aspects of TagoIO. Thank you, Freddie, for your time. Appreciate it. One thing to note here, I'm going to put a sticky note up here soon for the afternoon registration. If any of you that have not signed up for the afternoon, please go ahead and do so. For the afternoon session. And periodically, I'll also post, I already did once. Again, I'm David Hall. Just look for me in chat. I'm your moderator and host. I put some where you can request a demo. It's important to request a demo, especially after these trainings. I get quite a few demo requests because then you can go into some of these topics in more detail and you can learn much more about Tago and not just these specific things, right? How everything works together. So I highly recommend to ask for a demo, and somebody in your region, it may not be me, because we have other CSMs in your region, will be glad to host a one-on-one demo for you. But with that, I'll pass it to Victor. Welcome, Victor.
Hey, everyone. I'm glad to be here.
Oh, looks like Victor hit the wrong button. There he's back.
You really pressed the wrong button.
That's what I thought. No worries.
Okay, so I'm glad to be here today. I'll be talking about a few things on how TagoIO works. I think Freddie did a very good introduction. So I want to talk about Entity, which is a completely new feature that we released, I believe, the end of past year. Also want to show you how to use dashboards with analysis, how everything works behind the scenes so you can do yourself. And I'll be talking about the KickStarter as well. I think KickStarter is a powerful tool that helps you understand how TagoIO works and how to create a full application with a lot of features. Okay, so let me start here by sharing my screen and introduce you onto the entity feature. Okay. So if you are new to Tago, you have your devices here that usually you'll be storing data from your devices, that you have a hardware uplinking some readings to Tago so you can access to the dashboards, build analysis on top of it, create actions. And up to when we had the entities, we didn't have any other way of storing some random data. Like, let's say you have a contact list in your application, or you want to have just a list with some parameters. The way we used to do it is using a mutable device. So if you go here to the list of networks, you would find this storage, which is a network and a connector that does not have any kind of payload parser. And this just guides you how to use a device for storing other kinds of parameters that you want to use. So very common, if you're familiar with Tago, of creating organizations or locations here, associate this ID of this device with some user so they can have access. So usually you would do this kind of procedure if you want to have other kind of the data stored. So entities are newer solution for that. So instead of using the bootable device, you could actually use an entity. So this is a flexible tabular data schema, which means you would be able to create your database here for anything you want, giving a name. So let's say I want to create a contact list. And for this contact list, I have here some fixed fields that I cannot change, right? I cannot manipulate these fields, but I can add any kind of field I want for this table to have. So for example, I can have a first name, a last name, a phone number, and an email address. You can choose different types of values, so this helps a lot so you don't make mistakes when you are developing your application just by adding type restrictions. You can make it required, so you cannot add the data that does not have these values. And you can confirm, and you have your entity here. So here you would be able to see all the data. You can insert data here. Victor, put any number here. And you can see I can add any kind of value I want. For example, here is supposed to be an email address, right? So it's kind of wrong the way I'm doing here, but I'm going to show you how you can add validation to all these fields in a minute. So my data will be displaying here. So it works very similar to the mutable devices, except that you have your own fields. You are not forced to use variable, values, group, etc. And by the way, this row will be grouped in the widgets, as I'm going to show you in a few moments. So when you have your entity, you're going to have your fields here that you can freely manipulate. Very important that if I want to remove this field here, I can try to delete. Oh, this one was not required? I think it's only when you try to change the fields then. It's just that when you try to manipulate these fields and you have data here that would not fit to the new field type or value, like I know I had some problems with the required, for example, where I tried to make a required a field that was not previously required. I believe I can fit here. So for example, I can left my email address empty, and if I try to make email address required, I will get an error because I have a data in my entity that does not have value for that field. So if you want to do this kind of change, you need to go back to your data and add some value so you can actually change required. Sometimes it happens for deleting fields, and you need to manage your data so it matches the new schema that you want to apply. So very important to keep that in mind. And entity also have indexes. So indexes is a very important part of the entities because it's basically how you can do filtering and ordering for the data you are displaying or getting through the analysis. Automatically, when you create a new entity, it's going to come with this ID, created at, updated at, so these three types of fields. You can create a new one, so you can do filtering. For example, the way the index are set right now, I would not be able to filter by first name, for example, or email address. I couldn't do any kind of filtering. And the order here, if I use the created at, for example, it's going to be ordered by the time of creation. If I use the third index here, it's going to be ordered by the updated at, as you can see here, sorted by. So indexes are very important moving forward. Once you have a clear view of how you are going to use the entity on your dashboards and analysis. So for example, if I want to be able to filter by first name, I do need to have an index containing the first name and use this new index so I can properly apply filters to my data. And of course, index also helps you to have faster responses. And I think it's it about indexes. Can't think of anything else. Very important, but very easy to use. Go ahead.
There is a quick question here. First off, Gino, Freddie has posted the links that he said, so those are there, Gino. And then Gabriel had a question. Let's say we have an IoT device that returns some data that's relative, say a temperature sensor in Kelvin. Can we make an entity to make an additional part of that device? Basically what he's saying, in this case, we have an entity to be a conversion of the temperature.
Well, usually I'll try. I'll answer the question, but of course, for managing units, you probably want to do this in the widgets itself, using formula or Unity or dynamic values for units. But I don't understand your questions. If you can make it an extension of a device, this is something we are working to have. It already has for the dashboard. I'm going to show you in a minute. For the blueprints, where you have that drop downs. In some widgets, you will be able to link entity with devices, and I think this is going to work great. And for example, the map, which is the next widget that we are planning to release, you will be able to link a data inside an entity with a device and show up together in the same pin. Yeah, I think that's what you are asking for. But currently, we are still working on supporting all the widgets. I believe we have only 3 widget support for now. As we add more and more widgets, you're going to see entity being linked to device in very creative ways.
Thank you, Victor. That's another good reason for everybody in the audience to follow us on LinkedIn, sign up for our newsletter, things like that, so you can get these updates as we're making these types of changes. Thank you, Victor.
Yeah. And another thing we have here for entity is the schema parser. So as I did mention before, we have an email address here. The only thing we can set is the data type, but it does not have an email data type here. So how would you make sure that every single data is an email? The answer is using the schema parser. So basically, it allows you to add the validators to your data, and here you have a couple of snippets and code examples that you can use as base. So funny and email validator here allows us to get a fields. So always check if what you're receiving is an array or not, transform into array, and then iterate of each value before it's added to the data of the entity and check the fields. So for example, here I have my email address field, and I can validate here using a regex or whenever you prefer to return an error if it's not following this format. So I think this is a very useful tool. Here at Tago, we usually use some libraries to validate data formats, especially when storing data in devices. So having this on the entity itself as a parser really speed up the development of applications. And let me show you how this works with analysis. Let me save here. Phone number is the correct one. So then we can have a dashboard. Let me pick a normal or blueprint one. Give it a name. Here are the new tools for the blueprint dashboards, where you can select a blueprint device or a blueprint entity to show up in the drop-downs. And this is going to be available for your dashboard, for your widgets. So I can identify this entity as contact entity. I need to pick a tag value and a key. So let's say this is showcase true, and create this dashboard. So it's not going to show up here yet because I did not give the tag to my contacts. So let's see. Let's add here. Yeah, and now it's showing up. So you can have multiple entities and switch between them like you would do for mutable devices. You can link, right? Because blueprints do have conditions here and filter conditions. So you can link, for example, a device here. So let's say I have my car device. I have some tag for identifying this device. So I can link, for example, the options that are available in the blueprint entity on my device here based on matching another tag. And match, if you are not familiar with, it's going to match the value of the same tag between different resources. So this is one way to use. I want to keep it simple, so let's just add the contacts here. And for widget support, We have support today in the display widget. So the display widget, you can come here, select the data source for entity, select your blueprint entity, and put on the field that you want to display. So it's going to pick my last data inside the contacts. You do have filtering capabilities. So if you go here, oh, these widgets still don't have the filter capabilities. But you would be able to filter based on some of the fields that the entity data has. Let me just scroll down to make sure it really, yeah, still don't have this option. You have the table, entity table. So this is going to list all the data inside an entity. So I can get my contact list. Here is the index. So as I did mention, index very important for filtering, for ordering. So you can use ask or desk order for your table. And here we can configure our fields. So first name, and add another field for email address. And let's create. So it's going to show each one of my data. And entity table works very similar as a dynamic table for device data. So you can expect to have the option for edit. So you can edit this data directly here from the UI. So text, allow edit. And of course, I also need to enable the control column. So I can come here and add my value. So let's try to add a not supported value. Let me refresh the page quickly. Or add my email here. Yeah, so my browser is not real-time refreshing the widgets, but I think you got the point. Also, some widgets do get support, like dynamic table. You would have here in the edit options, you're going to have the entity and entity multi for being able to link data with entity IDs, things like that. You will be able to pick any of the values. Some of these widgets I'm already testing, so that's why I don't remember exactly what's in production right now. But I expect a lot of them being released soon, this month and next month. And of course, everything on entity is available to analysis in the SDK. So you can create entities, you can manipulate entity fields using analysis, and you can add data to the entities through the analysis. Okay, so
one question here. Sorry to interrupt you. Let's see. We have a user entity. So if possible, to create a relationship between device and user. So basically what they're asking is, an entity, can you make a relationship between device and user?
I'm not sure how you do that. You can put users inside the entity, right? This is your choice, but if you want to use TagoIO, you need to use users here, not the entity, for storing your users. Otherwise, they won't have access to Tago. To TagoIO, in the mobile, the mobile app.
That makes sense. And so you can ask that question. We can expand on it more in the community. That's a very good place to start because we have many developers such as Victor, and all our developers actually do monitor the community. So if you need more information there, feel free to post in the community. As far as Gabriel, feel free to ask your blueprint question. Freddie's monitoring the chat, so we can take care of that. And are entities used to show multiple devices? If you need the best way to do that, I would say that would also go in the community. I don't think we can. I know you're asking here the best way to make a dashboard with multiple of the same devices. I don't know if we have time to go over that today. I'll leave that to Victor. But if we don't get to that, again, just post in the community. And then Ramiro is asking, can I create an entity that groups some data from different devices? Again, if it's too much to go through all that, Victor, they can post in the community or just email me directly, but I'll let you handle that one.
Yeah, I can answer the questions though. Not sure if have the time to showcase everything, but I can answer. So usually, if you want to show data from multiple devices, you would create a mutable device, have an analysis that goes to each device, grab the data, and put in that single mutable device. Of course, you can do the same thing with entity rights. You can have an analysis running, grab the data from each device, do a calculation, or just copy the data to an entity. This is still the only way you can showcase multiple devices in the same dashboard. Anything on the entity, David?
I believe that is it for entity. Freddie will answer Gabriel about the blueprint. So that's it for that. No more questions.
Yeah, and I want to show more on the analysis side of the things. I think there was a good introduction for the entities, a lot to learn. I believe we plan to have a webinar specific to entity as soon as we have more widgets and more power, so we can have a full showcase on all the capabilities of this feature. Another thing I want to show you is how do you create a user and have an analysis and manipulate all your users through a dashboard. And I think this is very important as an introduction to analysis, understanding how all this connects together. Also, this is a very common thing to do on an application because when you are creating user and you are the developer, if you are doing only for yourself and for a couple of friends, that's okay. But in a production level, you want to have other users creating users for themselves, having kind of a multi-tenancy support with different customer accounts inside your application. And creating users by hand gets very boring and with time because of how much things you need to set up. So for example, if I want to create a user that has access to this customer list dashboard, I need to create the user, have a tag for that user, create the access policy. So I'll just show in case here. Let's say I have here my user. And then I need to have a tag for this user. So let's say guest user. Sometimes I need to link with an organization so I can give proper access to specific devices using tag match. And as your application grows, it's probably that you are going to have more and more tags on your users. And doing this on hand for each user, I don't recommend that at all. And you can make mistakes. You can give wrong access to wrong users, which can be very trouble. So the correct way for doing this is actually creating a dashboard and creating an analysis that is going to handle all this hard actions for you. David, would you mind mute your microphone? I think I can hear your keyboard.
Apologies. Thank you.
And I have set up here a dashboard for creating users. So this is a user list widget on a blueprint. So let's start with the blueprint first. So my blueprint is set up to get a device. It could easily be an entity now. With device type customer, so I am creating mutable device for each one of my big customers or organizations, so I can quickly choose which organization I want to see the users for. And below here, I have this user list widget, which has the filter here, right? So it's going to match the tag from my blueprint device on the tag organization ID. So if both my user and my device has the organization ID tag and the value of both tags are the same, it's going to show up here my user in the list. And I have different fields, control fields for managing these users, etc. And what I want to show you is actually this farm, because here is the code. So I have set up this input form with a few fields, and I'm going to show you quickly how I have done this. So this is a basic input form. I have set up a random field for my user fields. So new user email, new username, new user password. I can even generate the password automatically from the analysis if I want to. I drop down for access level. So I have the tags for different access levels that I want to attribute to my user. And I have validation field, which allow me to send some feedback through my input form here to the user that is managing or creating new users through this widget. I also set up a markdown, so I can use italic, bold, etc. And in my button here, I put an identifier, very important if you have a single analysis that handles different type of actions. But if you have an analysis specific for this input form, identifier is not going to help you much. I have disabled the send to bucket because I don't want to store any of these on my device. I just using the device so I can identify which organization I'm linking this user to. And I'm triggering an analysis from here, so I have this TagoIO handler. Okay, so all the setup in dashboard is done. You don't need more than that. We can go to the analysis here. I can create a new one. Just setting up Node.js. I'm going to code in JavaScript, put a name, press create, right? We're going to pick this one that's already created. And from here, I can start to code my script that is going to handle the analysis, the users for me. So if you load the snippet for Hello World, this is the basic layout of your script. You don't need more than that to start. Of course, you are going to want to check the SDK for all the functions available. You can load other snippets to see how different functionalities work. And for my user, what we can do first, if you are just starting, is to check what are the contexts and what is the scope. So context has some information about your analysis environment. So for example, you can get your analysis name, you can get your analysis token, If you need to use for services like sending notifications, etc., you can get your environment variables, and if you have secrets, TagoIO secrets linked to this analysis, also is going to come from the context. And scope, this is an optional parameter. The content of the scope really depends on how this analysis is being triggered. So since we are going to trigger our analysis using the widgets, I do expect to receive the scope here, all the widget information that the user fill in the input form. So if I'm triggering through an action, it really depends on the action, right? If it's a data action, you are going to receive the data that had triggered your action through the scope. For example, if it's a resource action, for example, for when you are triggering the analysis because a user had been created or because a device had been created, you are going to receive the information about the device or about the user, etc. So scope is going to change its content depending on what you are using to trigger the analysis. So I can save this so we can check what we are receiving. So I can come here on my user. I need to put a real email here. Press send. And it's going to show up here in my console everything that I received. So it is an array containing each one of the fields. You have the value, you have the device. So device is very important when you are using this kind of drop downs, right? So device is actually the ID of the device that had been selected here. Because I do have the Acme Corp here. So it's going to give me this ID here that I have available for this device, which is going to allow me to link this device to this user using tags or other kind of tools that I want to use. Okay, so now that I know what's coming from my analysis, I can start to write my code. So first thing I want to do is to import my resources. So I have all the tools available for creating users, like run, I believe it's user creates, and I can pass here the data. So let's move this below. Also, I always recommend to check if you have all the information you need from your analysis before running. So very important security step. So if we don't get the scope, it's important to get an error here. And stop the script before running any code in your application. We can get here the organization ID, which I mentioned is the device. So as you can see, the ID for each one of the data is the same because when I created the input form, I used the same blueprint. But if you have three blueprint devices in your blueprint dashboard, and you are using different blueprints in the same input form, you might also want to check for the correct variable so you can get the correct device. In this case, it's all the same, so I just get the first one. I'm also going to get each one of my variable. So here we are using find that is going to look inside the array for an object where the variable is equal to the same field I've put in my input form. So this is going to give me all the values the user have chosen and fill it in the input form. Here, very important to start to write your error handling. So same thing, if organization ID is important, stop the script before you do any harm. And of course, you can have all the other error handlings here. And since now I have all the fields I need, I can start creating my user. So I can do an await here because this is a promise. And start entering my fields. Email, phone, password. For the users, you need to pass the time zone. I'll just pick American New York here. But if you have users in different time zones, you may want to add this field to your input form as well. Active true. If I want the user to be created already active, right? Because you can put false and active later. And also my tags. So this is what I'm looking for, so it can facilitate my life. And I can do the value as access level. Organization. Yeah, so I think this is going to create the user for me. Let me hide this. And of course, very important to do error handling. You want to know what's going on if something triggers an error. So putting a try catch helps a lot. And if everything goes correctly, we want to send a validation to the input form saying that the user had been successfully created. The way we can do that is by sending a data to our device. And I have my variable, my value. And for validations, you can also use the metadata to add some behaviors. So for example, type, and I believe you have 3 different types, which is success, danger, and warning. Success type is going to automatically close the widget if you are using a header button like this that show up the widget on top of the page. So when they get a success message, after about 5 seconds, this widget automatically closes and goes back to the screen. And this one I want to actually put here. And if I get an error, maybe it's a good idea to add here the error. Right? And we can save and start to test. Of course, just creating the analysis do not give this analysis the permission to run all this code. So if you want your analysis to be able to manipulate users, you need to create an access policy. So this is what we are going to do next. So I can go to access, add a new policy. Let's call this user analysis. I can pick an analysis here, do by ID, pick my analysis from the list, and give the permissions. The permissions I want is to run user. I can give just create because it's the only code I'm running, but I can also give more options if you are doing more things in your analysis. And I can give access to all the users or just users with specific tags, your choice. I'm also sending a data, so I want to give access to send data to my analysis. And I can give access to any device or just specific devices and create this policy. So this is enough to give my analysis all the permissions it needs to run. And now if I go to my user list, I can try to create my user here. I have two types of user. Let's try to create the administrator. And we can check the analysis for any error. So we did got an error here. Device can be found. Oh, probably the user was created. If I refresh my screen. How I am filtering this? The tech match with organization ID. You can see the test user is here. The organization, it needs to be organization ID. Okay. So let me create the user so I can create again. And about the error is because I did miss one of the parameters for send device data, which is device ID. So where do I want to put my data? So I do have the device ID here. I did mention the device gets the ID of the device that had been used for the input form. So I need to pass it here so I get the proper validations, and I need to fix the key so it's going to show up in my list. Okay, so I can test again. By the way, I don't want to lock. So this option waits for validation to unlock is going to lock this widget so the user has some kind of feedback that the analysis is still running. Okay. Send the invite, so it locks. And now I got my validation, so it closed, and now it shows up in the list. So I'm showcasing here how to do it with user, but it's good to keep in mind that it's the same logic for almost anything you have in Tago. You can do the same thing for devices if you want to create devices. Same thing for entities, files, even actions. Actions is a bit hard because you don't have a widget for action list like you have for entity, device, and users. But you can put inside an entity and display like if it is an analysis. So I think that gives a great showcase on how you perform all this. And now that we have this cover, I think I can show you how KickStarter works. And KickStarter is a great example of seeing a lot of how we had done different applications through the years. Because the KickStarter itself is a full application. So let me open KickStarter here. So if you go to our page, you are going to find the KickStarter for IoT. So the idea of the KickStarter is to be a plug-and-play application that you can install in your profile. It's going to give you a few dashboards, analysis, dictionary, all the access policies for the analysis to run. So very easy to install. And you can see how all this thing works, manipulate yourself, delete everything, install again if you mess up something. And the code for everything is fully open source, which means you can go to the code and see by yourself how this thing operates behind the scenes. We have a demo here, so if you want to check the KickStarter, you just sign up, log in, and you can navigate to the application using simulators, or you can download the KickStarter to your profile. By the way, to install the KickStarter, you need to have a starter account. You cannot install the KickStarter on a free account. And here is all the code. So this is the GitHub for the Kickstarter. You have releases. The next release is going to have the entity implemented in all the dashboards. And you can see here all the components. So we have organization and group, 3 access level for users, organization's plans, so you can limit SMS, email, and data retention for the organizations. You can set up alerts, generate scheduling reports, and everything working with the Tago Run. We have an easy installation step. So first thing you need to do is to make sure your run is activated. So in your account, you go to run here. I don't remember the word that is here, but I don't remember if it's activate. But right below here, you have the option to activate the Tago Run. For me, it's saved because it's already activated in this account. And you can manage your Tago Run from here. So this is going to be the portal. You're going to have your own URL here where your users are going to access your application. Because your user surely is not going to see all these different tools when they start to use the application. So once you have activated, you go to your profile settings. So I go to my account, Kickstarter profile, tokens, and you're going to generate a token here that never expires. Very important to do that, because if I do remember well, there are still a few things in the Kickstarter that is going to continue to use this token. Probably next version, you can do just on 1 hour expiration, because everything will be moved to the access policies. So you create, it's going to ask for your password, then you get your token, and you can go to the next step, which is accessing the import tool. So here you can choose 2 different Kickstarters, the ArtLS or the default one. ArtLS is a more tracking application. So you have maps, geofences, things like that. And the default Kickstarter is more for measurement and readings like temperature, freezer, this kind of thing. You can choose the components you want to import. So if it's your first time, you can import everything. But sometimes you want to update your Kickstarter, but you have changed all the dashboards. You don't want the new installation to replace all the dashboards, so you can remove if you don't want to. But in order to get the full application for the first time, important to get all the options checked. You're going to paste your profile token here on the bottom, select your region, and start the import tool. So it's going to start to import everything to my account. So if I go back here, access my Kickstarter profile, Yeah, so I already imported. So you get this notification, start importing process, import successfully. And you can see I have all these dashboards on the side. If I go to analysis, I'm going to have analysis for each one of the functionalities from the KickStarter. I have all the access policies as well. I believe it creates one single device here that probably is going to be an entity in the next version that just stores uh, application data that is exclusive for the application, not specific to any customer. And also is going to set up my run for the sidebar. So sidebar is where you put all the buttons for your user to click and access the dashboards. So it's going to set up everything for you with visibility conditions, depending on the access of each user. And you can navigate and see how each one of these dashboards had been made. The thing is, in order to access the application as a user, because it's very hard to navigate through the application through these dashboards here, right? You probably don't know even where to start. The GitHub tool here has a documentation. I think it's important for me to show you. Yeah, so you have the Kickstarter guide. So this PDF is going to help you understand everything you need to know about the Kickstarter. So, for example, introduction, telling what it is, all the features it contains, and all the tags that had been used. And what I'm looking for here is how to create the administrator user. And do I have a table of content here? Well, you can admin basic walkthrough, probably granting access to a new end user. So you can start on page 14 if you want to know what I'm going to show you here. So in order to create the first user, let's create a user to myself. The only thing I need to do is to create a tag called access admin. And this user is going to have full access to the platform. Now I can log in as the user, and I can see exactly what a full administrator is able to see. So I can start on the admin here, create my organization, my first organization. I do believe I need to create a plan first, yeah. So first thing I need to create is a plan. Let's call this starter. Give it some usage limits for different services. And then I can create my organization. So I can imagine the map, I can select the plan, I can already invite a user if I want to. Yeah, and then my organization is created. And this linked me to the sensor dashboard, which is going to show all the sensors I have for this customer. And you can see here it's set to simulator and to use the freezer simulator. And it's going to work very well, I believe. The group is required, so I need to create a group as well. So this allows me to group different devices in a single group. And now I can go back and create my device inside that group. yeah, so it had been created. As soon as my freezer simulator start to send data, this is going to update. And I can also go to my freezer dashboard. So when I start to receive data, it's going to show up here. So one of the first questions people do when trying to use the KickStarter is how to add the sensor, right? Because of course this is good for demonstration, but what you actually want is to showcase your own device here to use. And I'm going to show you how to do this very quickly. And of course, you will going to start to messing up with the dashboards, etc. Of course, all these steps are in the docs here in the PDF if you want to follow through. But it's quite simple how this works. So when you create a new device, this input form you have here on the hidden tab is actually going to call an analysis called handler. So this handler has routes for all the buttons you can click through the different dashboards. So when you click here, and by the way, is everything with these hashes, etc., because we are using dictionary. So dictionary adds the support for different languages. So this is why you're seeing everything with these hashtags. And the way this analysis set to work is that it's going to look for the network in the type field here. So you can see have freezer simulator in the type or network here on the top. And I can add here any network I want. So for example, if I want to add TTN, I can add the ID for the TTN network here. I do believe Freddy did show you how to do that. But I'm going to show again, just to be sure. So you go to devices, add device. You're going to find your network here on the side. So for example, TTN, and you have the ID of the network on the URL here. So I can add the TTN network to this drop down. And then for the device type, I have freezer simulator. I can add any other device I want to. So for example, if I want the custom TTN, I can click on it and I'm going to have the ID in the last position here for the connector of the custom TTN connector. And I can place here. So this is very easy way to add support for your device into the input form. I also want to add here the truck simulator. So let me pick another device, simulator, refrigerated truck, I believe this one. Just to showcase how to link dashboards as well. So you can see here, I can pick TTN. It's going to show the UI here for me to add. I can pick simulator, refrigerated truck, so everything available, and I can already create the device. The only problem here is, as you did saw when I created the freezer simulator, is that it's linked to a dashboard that is specific to freezer. And of course, this dashboard is not going to work for the truck simulator or the custom TTI that you are editing. And the way this analysis is set to operate is that it's actually going to link to any dashboard that has the connector ID tag. So I have here a couple of dashboards like Dash Tracker, etc. All of them has a connector ID, as you can see. So I can check if the connector ID tag has the same ID of my connector. So tracker, sensor, dashboard, I can go to tags, So this connector ID is from a different connector, so I can replace. Or if I'm creating a new dashboard, I just come here and add the tag with my connector ID, and I can press save. So now, when the analysis adds a new device, it's going to look for a dashboard that has that connector ID, and the first dashboard it finds, it's going to link to the new device. So let's try tests with the refrigerated truck. And create. If I've done anything wrong, it's going to tell me here. You could not find the dashboard, something like that. And if I click here to go to the dashboard, I click in the freezer. Oh, it did not link to the correct dashboard. Let me see what I have done wrong. Freezer simulator. Freezer simulator. I think I'm missing something here. Tags, connector ID, type tracker. Let me see how device was created. Truck. Oh, this needs to change as well. I don't remember exactly. Page 16, so let me check so I can show you this working. Yeah, so you have all the options here. Okay, so I do need to change another thing in the dashboard. So let's go back there, tracker sensor dashboard, edit dashboard, and the blueprint, I need to change this to a different type. So you have the different access if you want to put it, and have type tracker. This is already set up. Have the connector ID. Yeah, that should have been enough. Probably I'm going to need to check what's missing here. But it should be having enough for linking the dashboard to your truck device. I think that's all I have to show on the KickStarter. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask.
So there is one question here from Ramiro. I think this is more for me. Once I subscribe from a starter account, can I request a demo one-on-one anytime for support? And is there any additional cost for it? No, once you sign up for a starter account, you will get an email where you can have a free 45-minute onboarding session, and you could use that session in any way that you like. Most of those sessions are for technical purposes, but it's your meeting. Ramiro, so you can use that however you want. Anybody can always ask for a one-on-one demo at any time, whether you're a customer or not a customer. But normally, if you're a customer, you already know who your CSM is because the CSM will reach out to you. But yeah, if you go ahead and sign up for your starter account, and you'll get a 45-minute onboarding call. There are no other questions, Victor.
Do we still have time?
We have, this is supposed to end, and what else do you need to go through? Access management?
I have already spoke about the access management.
Okay, I think we're good for today then. As I said, everybody, up top is the registration for the afternoon session. And also, make sure that you guys, for people that missed it at the top of this session, tomorrow I'm going to send everybody an email after this session, but tomorrow you're going to get an email about a survey. Part of that survey, there's a question in there if you want to receive $100 certificate for the training center. Can I share my screen, Victor, real quick to show them?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so what that $100 certificate is if you go to Resources, Learning Center, go to Training, lots of our customers take this training. The 100s are the fundamentals. The 200s are a little more advanced. But once you take all these self-paced free training, at the end there is a certificate that you can obtain. There's more to it, but we're running out of time. But there's a certificate. So if you say yes in the survey that you would like to receive the $100 promotion for the certificate, then we will send you the promo code so you don't have to pay the $100. Also, another quick thing while we're here is lots of folks don't realize that we have these templates here. And these templates you can download, and once you download them, you own them. They're in your profile. So these are highly recommended as well for that. So I think that's it for today's session. Victor, do you have anything else? I don't think he does. Okay, sign up for the afternoon session. Be starting here in an hour and a half. And then also sign up for day 2. I really appreciate everybody's participation, and we look forward to seeing you this afternoon. Thank you, everybody.
Hey, David. So I want to show why that didn't work.
Oh, yes, please. Let me stop my share.
So real quickly here, just looking at the code, I can see here that one of our developers hard-coded the connector ID here. So it's looking for the same dashboard. So this is going to be fixed, and it's going to work exactly how I show. It's just that the dashboard is hard-coded here. Just for everyone to know, I think the great thing about the KickStarter is that you can go to the code, look, and see what's going on. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Mark, there'll be an email that comes out tomorrow for I see your question to send you the $100 coupon. There'll be an email that comes out tomorrow for the survey. Sorry, drew a blank. And one of the questions in the survey is, would you like to receive a $100 certificate or something along those lines? Just answer yes to that, and then we'll send you the $100 coupon for that. So again, thank you, everybody. Thank you for the kind words. I'm seeing excellent webinar, great webinar, all that stuff in the chat. It's our pleasure to do these for you. Again, as I said, these are extremely popular. Well over 100 people just for this morning's session. So again, extremely popular. Follow us on LinkedIn. Go to our website. Check out some of our new features. Sign up for our newsletter so you get to know when the next training is, as well as events that we have coming up, new releases, new features, and things like that. But other than that, everybody, thank you again for your time. We'll see you in a couple hours on the afternoon session if you're able to make it. Bye-bye.